My hands are up, up, up. My hands are up, up, up. My hands are up, up, up. My hands are up.
Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go!
My hands are up, up, up. My arms are waving. My feet won't stop, stop, stop. My body's moving from side to side. 'Cause I'm alive, and nothing's gonna hold me back this time. Yeah, all my friends are here, and they're supporting. It's time to turn it up. Let's get it started. Hands are high, 'cause we're alive, and nothing's gonna hold us back this time.
Let's go! There's a rhythm in my heart and it won't stop. And my feet are gonna dance till the beat drop. 'Cause there's a love that I can't define. It's blowing my mind, it's changing my life. So come on and get moving. It doesn't really matter what mood you're in. When your body and your feet are grooving, then that's when the party begins.
My hands are up, up, up. My arms are waving. My feet won't stop, stop, stop. My body's moving from side to side. 'Cause I'm alive, and nothing's gonna hold me back this time. Yeah, all my friends are here, and they're supporting. It's time to turn it up. Let's get it started. Hands are high, 'cause we're alive, and nothing's gonna hold us back this time.
Can't keep my body still, can't shut it down. This be the feel. It's thumping, yeah, it's pumping, yeah, it's something that is thumping still. Everybody put your hands up, get a little louder, yeah, turn it up. You know how to do it, yeah, dance it up. Yeah, yeah, dance
My
it
hands
up.
are up, up, up. My arms are waving. My feet won't stop, stop, stop. My body's moving from side to side. 'Cause I'm alive, and nothing's gonna hold me back this time. Yeah, all my friends are here, and they're supporting. It's time to turn it up. Let's get it started. Hands are high, 'cause we're alive, and nothing's gonna hold us back this time.
Do this dance with us, man. Put one hand up, turn around, turn around. Put two hands high, turn around, turn around. Bring them both down slow and bring them down low. Here we go, here we go. Yeah.
My hands are up, up, up. 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 My arms are waving. My feet won't stop, stop, stop. My body's moving from side to side. 'Cause I'm alive, and nothing's gonna hold me back this time. Yeah, all my friends are here, and they're supporting. It's time to turn it up. Let's get it started. Hands are high, 'cause we're alive, and nothing's gonna hold us back this time. My hands are up, up, up. 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 My hands are 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 up
Paul wrote a letter to the church at Corinth. Years after Paul helped start the church in Corinth, the believers there were facing problems. One problem was that the church was divided. The people did not always get along or agree about what was most important. The believers met in small groups and had different leaders. Some groups were arguing that their leaders were better than others. One person would say, "I belong to Paul." Another would say, "I belong to Apollos." Or, "I belong to Peter," or "I belong to Christ." Paul wanted this to stop. Is Christ divided? Paul asked. Of course not. Jesus came to bring people together as one body, brothers and sisters in God's family. Christians should not fight about which human leader has the most wisdom or strength. What is most important is the gospel. Paul said, "The word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but it is the power of God to us who are being saved." God uses what seems foolish to the world, that is, God, the Son giving up his life for us, in order to bring salvation to the world. Paul also reminded the church that believers cannot boast about themselves or other people. No human is as wise or powerful as God. When Paul preached, he didn't use fancy words so that people would think he was smart. He simply shared the good news about Jesus. Everyone in the church is united around Jesus, who died on the cross for our sins. He is God's wisdom and power. When we remember the gospel, we can live in unity with others. Other things, like immaturity and foolishness, cause division in the church. Paul wrote his letter to help the believers in Corinth. He told them many things about how to follow Jesus. Believers should live in such a way that people see them and know they belong to Jesus. Paul told the believers in the Corinthian church to come together because of the gospel. He reminded them that Jesus saves sinners. Because of Jesus and what he has done, believers can humbly come together as one body.
Hey there, I'm Pastor Brian, and it's time for Questions from Kids. Rachel from Logansport, Indiana asks,
Another girl at my school is a Christian too, but we don't get along. What should I do?
You know, as we answer this question, I think it's really helpful to think about why we get along with certain people and we don't with others. You know, one of the things is a lot of times we're drawn to people who are like us. They share similar interests, so maybe it's a sport. And if two people play the same game, say soccer, you're going to be drawn together because you have that in common. Or some other hobby. Maybe it's going to the same school, being in the same class, living in the same neighborhood. There's so many different things that connect us. And so a lot of times, if somebody has that in common, we're drawn to them. And if somebody doesn't, we're not as drawn to them. So here's the thing, when you think about it, this friend of yours in school, Rachel, who you don't necessarily get along with, you share the most important thing in common, and that's Jesus. So I'd encourage you to do this. I would encourage you to focus on that in your friendship. Talk about where you guys go to church. Talk about your favorite Bible stories. Talk about Jesus. Talk about challenges you have of living for Him. And I think if you start to do that, it may feel weird at first, uncomfortable, but if you start to do that and you start to see you have this most important thing in common, I wouldn't be surprised if you started becoming good friends. But here's the other thing. It's even okay if you never become good friends. Again, we can't be friends with everybody. As long as you guys are not unkind to one another, as long as you're not adversarial, that's okay. You don't have to be best friends. And so if you try this and you guys are just acquaintances from this point forward, that's okay. But I would encourage you, try to connect with that person. Try to become friends, because especially in a school environment, anytime we have the opportunity to be friends with another person who believes in Jesus Christ, that is so, so helpful. So I'd encourage you, give it your best effort, trust in God, see what He might do. and see he might grow a great friendship for you with this other girl at school. So here's a question back for you. What are some ways you can show love like Jesus with anyone that you know?
Come on, let's sing. I was lost with a broken heart. You picked me up, now I'm set apart. From the ash I am born again, forever safe in the Savior's hands.